Greetings, everyone. Wow, what a drama. It's Naomi Wolf. I'm here with one of my, I say this rarely, but every time I say it, it's very deeply felt. One of my personal heroes, Catherine Austin Fitts. Welcome, Ms. Austin Fitts.
Thank you. And, I don't know how many times you've been Hero of the Week on the Salary Report, but it's multiple. So yeah. I think you're just about to be hero again. And we're going to run you did a great interview walking us through the different systems issues as to what's going on in the federal government. I think it was called The Sack of Rome. So that's going to be movie of the week next week with you as Hero of the Week.
Well, that's a great honor because probably no surprise to you, since I've been talking with you and in my own podcasts and essays about the danger that I see represented by some of how DOGE is engaging with our data and our systems, you are literally the only person who fully understands it and goes beyond my own understanding. But I've been getting nonstop harassment, cancellations of subscriptions, mean comments. It's very, very unpopular. So let's forge ahead. Because of technical interference, the like of which I've almost never seen in trying to communicate with Ms. Austin Fitts from here in Europe. You're in the Netherlands, I believe, and I'm in the United Kingdom. I've finally gotten through, but it means I don't have her bio in front of me. So I will just say from my reading of her last distinguished bio that she was a senior official at HUD in charge of first a $300 million portfolio and then a $500 million portfolio.
Billion.
Thank you for correcting me. That's a big difference. And she also identified waste and mismanagement. She was harassed. Lawfare was waged against her. She has accomplished many other distinguished things, and she's the head of the Salary Report, which is, one of the most important independent sites, platforms. She's one of the most important independent voices, especially in the world of the relationship between economics and government and globalism. She understands all of these worlds and their intersections and the threats to liberty in a way that I would honestly say no one else does, with the sophistication that no one else has. And so it's a great honor to be speaking with her again. And Ms. Austin Fitts, if there's anything significant I've left out of my recap of your bio, please add it.
So our goal for this audience is, one, to get a clear map of what's going on. There's, and sort of lower the confusion level and do that in a way that, in your daily lives or in your political activities, if you are active, how to act for freedom for yourself, your family, your community, and the broader world. So that's our goal.
That is our goal. And I guess before we launch in, I just want to kind of reassure everyone or restate, how can I put this? And I kind of did a riff on this yesterday. It's not disloyal to whatever leader or party you support to voice criticisms of one thing or another that he or she might be launching, because this is how our leaders, especially in a democracy, get information. They're surrounded. Right. I'm sure you would agree with this, Catherine. If I may call you Catherine, they're surrounded by a bubble of donors, advisors, functionaries, all with their own agendas. And it's very hard for them, and then media is another bubble around them. It's very hard for them to hear their constituents without, focus groups or in-person rallies. And even that's not objective because it's self-selecting. So it's actually a really important thing for people to recognize right now, that it is a mark of patriotism to say, hey, wait a minute, I may support, 60% or 70% or 80% of what you're doing, but this is not right. Give some attention to this. That's an act of service.
So
would you agree?
I couldn't agree more. I always say there's an inside game and there's an outside game. So the people like Bobby who've gone in are trying to play an inside game, and we need people doing that. But I told everybody on November 5th, the real campaign starts now, because the freedom fighters and the people who want central control, if you look at the pressure on the president and his team from the people who want central control, it's frightening. I mean, it's literally frightening. And, and it's dangerous because these are dangerous people. And so if if the major donors and the people who want central control are pressing hard and we're not equally encouraging freedom and protecting liberty and warning, okay, if you go along with the pro-centralization team on this, we're going to, squawk. That gives them the political oomph. They kind of say, I can't get away with that. Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
Right.
Thank you.
So,
thank you
right.
for saying that. People really don't understand that it is a constant negotiation for the principals, the people at the top,
Right.
and all the people at the table are not us. And so it empowers them to be able to say, hey, Mr. Lobbyist, hey, Mr. Globalist, hey, Mr. Tech Bro, I'd love to be able to, give you what you want, but look, my base is screaming, or the swing voters are screaming, I can't get away with it. Sorry. That is
Right.
so helpful. And I think your example of RFK Jr. is such a good one, because literally he's a case study in how he might want to give us our whole wish list, right? As
Right.
the freedom movement, the medical freedom movement, he literally won't be able to unless we keep yelling and screaming. So well
Right.
said, campaign starts now. So
Right.
let me, sorry, go ahead.
So, and to get into that position, he has had to say things. I mean, there's a reason I want to be an outsider. And, he has had to make compromises that I'm very uncomfortable with. And I have called him out on, in the hopes of trying to make it easier for him to do the right thing. So I'm with you.
Absolutely. So what I want to get into deeply is, you and I had an important conversation about the dangers of what DOGE was doing. I was worried about cybersecurity. You were worried about cybersecurity. You were worried about privacy. You're worried about the turnkey control grid. Since that conversation, which was about a week or a week and a half ago, you've been sending me very tantalizingly really important links demonstrating how far the danger goes and how right we are to worry about it. But I don't have your knowledge base or expertise to explain fully. And also, honestly, I don't want to be the only one out there. It's very scary.
Right.
Explaining fully to people what those links are and why they matter. So would you mind starting by putting some of those links into context? What have you been learning more in the last week and a half about the control grid, as you put it, the dangers of how DOGE is going about what they're doing? Anything else you want to share?
Right. So let me just say as background, if you look at some of the things that Trump and his team are trying to implement, they are responding to real challenges in the marketplace, in the world, that need to be responded to. And it's very important when you look at what they're doing that you understand, okay, if I were in their shoes dealing with what I'm dealing with, what would I do? And because a lot of the criticisms are criticisms of people who don't want to see change, but the Trump administration doesn't control that. They have to respond to those changes. So let me give you an example. We saw the Joint Chief of Staff person replaced. That's one of the latest headlines. And if you look at the debate behind it, what the Trump group is saying is we need a high performance military in this world. We just lost at hybrid warfare. We need to also be good at conventional warfare. To do that, we need somebody who's very performance oriented. Now, you can agree or disagree with the particular person chosen, but that's the intelligent response, what they're trying to do.
Quick question. I don't understand what you mean when you say hybrid warfare versus, what do you mean we just lost at hybrid warfare? In what way?
So our strategy in the Ukraine was to win through hybrid warfare. And hybrid warfare means you use soft power tools to pressure the Russians and get them to get rid of Putin and economic sanctions, and basically implode Russia using hybrid warfare tools, not conventional. And what we saw was the Russians won with conventional warfare. And the message is you have to be great at hybrid and conventional if you want to be the winning military. And we're behind the eight ball. If you look at military, if you go down the key technologies you need to win, to be the leading military in this environment, we have fallen dangerously behind.
Wow, I did not know that.
Hi everyone, Naomi Wolf here. Ashish Kumar Jha, who was the former Biden administration COVID-19 response coordinator, recently gave a chilling speech at the University of Michigan School of Public Health. Zhao warned of a new age of pandemics, fueled by bioweapons development and by natural threats. He called for massive investments in vaccines against pathogens that don't even exist yet, and urged a war against so-called, quote, misinformation. But the question we need to ask is, who's working on bioweapons, and how many labs are there globally? Yes, Trump won, but that doesn't mean that evil is not still lurking in the background, and being prepared, no matter what your politics, is always the best defense. The wellness company's Contagion Emergency Kit, developed by Dr. Peter McCullough and his medical board, includes 5 critical life-saving medications, such as ivermectin, Tamiflu, and a nebulizer. It includes hydroxychloroquine. Every household can now have access to these hard-to-get medications without any of the red tape. It's so simple. Fill out a digital intake form and your kit will arrive in 1 to 2 weeks. Don't wait until the powers that be put their plans into action. Stay ready for the unexpected. History has shown that only that way can you really stay safe. Head to dailyclouthealth.com and use code DAILYClout to save $32 off plus free shipping. Kits are only available to U.S. residents. I really urge you to go ahead and protect your family now. dailyclouthealth.com and use promo code DAILYClout. Thank you.
You're saying that our military, which used to be the greatest fighting force in the world, is behind a second-rate power like Russia in terms of conventional, traditional war fighting, as they're saying these days?
We have been very successfully globally with hybrid warfare, and hybrid warfare is of the kind we've been doing no longer works, and Ukraine is the proof. Which I'm not.
How do you define hybrid warfare specifically?
The use of economic and political sanctions, along with media propaganda and neurological weaponry and invisible weaponry, like weather warfare and what can be done from satellites.
Gotcha.
So the Russians have been very good at electronic warfare and satellites in space for a long time. So even though they are a much smaller military in terms of spending, they're not a smaller military in spend of conventional armed forces. They have been able, now it's not our military in the Ukraine. We've been using the Ukrainian military.
Right.
But we clearly thought you could win without a successful conventional strategy. The reality is the Russians since 2010, 2012 have been investing significantly in things like advanced missile technology, and their military, from everything I can tell, is much more lean and mean. So even though their spending is a lot less, they get a much bigger bang for their buck. And part of it was part of our soft power tools, is we put everybody on the payroll so they don't play for the other team. And if you look at all the defense, a cost plus infrastructure on defense, I think one of the things you're going to be watching is trying to convert to a much more leaner and meaner military, and one that dovetails with the civilian investment in terms of making sure we're leading in technology. So there is, if you look at part of the scramble is a scramble that if you and I were in there, we would be trying to redirect that way too. So that's number one.
All right.
Okay. So if you look at what is happening, the links I've been sending, the number of violations of the law, privacy laws, conflict of interest laws related to the management of IT are so many and so egregious, and we can go through them if you want. They're becoming very long lists. They're so egregious that my question is, are we looking at the privatization? Are we looking at sharing all the data in government with private parties, including AI? Or are we looking simply at the taking, so that all those functions have to be done by whether they're done as corporate contractors working for the government
Mhm.
or private companies. If you, for example,
Mhm.
strip out all the people doing weather in the federal government, suddenly we all have to pay private companies to do
Right.
that weather function because we can't get the data.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I can't tell if we're looking at a privatization by sharing with private parties, particularly AI,
Mhm.
or if we are um, literally watching a stripping and taking, because we've seen judges say you can't destroy. So at the Consumer Financial Protection Board, destroying all that data is very dangerous, particularly because cybercrime and internet and sort of retail fraud is going off the charts. So I don't know which it is, but it's at that level of extraordinary taking that I can't tell.
Okay.
So, right.
Thank you. That's very clear. So I want to step in here and just recap in very basic language for non-techies, what I'm seeing and what I think you're seeing, which is raising such alarm. So what I'm seeing is all of these amazing headlines, which are so much fun, that everyone loves, that I love, of, oh my God, 300-year-old people getting Social Security benefits. Oh my God, $20 billion in gold bars hidden in a janitor's closet. Oh my God, so much waste and fraud. They're fantastic headlines. Everyone loves that. They're very distracting. They're very popular. But I'm also not seeing any documentation on the DOGE website, right? I've noticed that the DOGE website is very badly structured for any kind of website, government or private, so that it's not searchable by keyword, so that you literally can't verify, that these things have been found, or what the programs are at USAID that were cut. You could upload all of them onto a searchable database very, very easily, the ones that aren't classified, and check for yourself. If there are 300-year-old people, you can block their personally identifying information, living or dead, and show that these are real findings. So I'm not seeing that. And you've got that on the one hand, which is so thrilling to people. On the other hand, as you point out, and as I know, diving into all that data is a perfect opportunity for someone like Elon Musk and his cloud computing guy that he took with him, his 6 engineers that he took with him, the opportunity to, as you said, extract all the data for their AI, number one, right? Which would make their AI more powerful than any AI, because AI needs real life data. B, steal all of our IP or clone it, right? That all of the things your taxpayer dollars paid for to build, as annoying as you find the government, systems that process your Social Security check, systems that pay for your Medicaid, all of that is IP. Weather systems, satellite systems, telecommunication systems, that can all be cloned, right? That's why I was so worried he brought a cloud person with him. That's why I keep saying, what non-compete, what non-disclosure has he signed? And you pointed out that there's a regulation saying people can't benefit personally in the government from conflicts of interest or from data that they see. And then lastly, as you rightly point out, it could also be a collapsing of all of the government functions, so that we have to buy them again in the future from private contractors. It could be all three. It could be 2 out of 3. But all of these things, without knowing what is the cybersecurity, what's the IP, what's the oversight, what's the privacy, and all the illegality of access that you describe, all these people who are trying to stand by and say, hey, wait a minute, that's private, taxpayer Social Security numbers, private financial information, they're being like fired, or furloughed or gotten rid of.
Right. So people who are trying to protect the citizens' legitimate rights in terms of privacy or illegalities are being, are resigning rather than break the law.
Right.
And that's we've seen a lot of the head of Social Security, the head of the Treasury payment systems, the head of I think it was the GSA, the Notify system.
Mm-hmm.
Those are very heroic people, because what they know is the danger to individuals if that data is is leaked, given out, is insecure, and God knows if it's turned over to AI, then you're watching it really go on a sort of out of control basis. And it's very, very dangerous. And I think it's very rare for people who don't deal with tech to understand how dangerous this
So
is.
thank you for saying that. One thing I want to say is what this reminds me of is when under the Bush 2 administration, there was a draining of the Pentagon and the military and a transfer of billions of dollars in contracts to private contractors and we privatized the functions of the military. That it reminds me of that to some extent. I don't know if that's been reversed, but it was like a windfall for private defense, private contractors. And the other thing is, I just want to say, one reason I'm so worked up about this is in looking at the bills, I've seen so many bills, and it's always buried in a 600-page bill, right, in which the IP has been transferred to stakeholders,
Right.
which are these private entities. Lastly, when private data, and I'm just being really nerdy about this so people really understand, when our privately held, legally protected data is transferred from government hands, much as you might hate them, to third parties like NGOs or for-profit companies, a lot of protections are gone, including not just privacy, but like accuracy. For instance, the CDC was able to lie a lot about the impacts of the injection by subcontracting or sending the management of some data illegally to NGOs and then letting the NGOs claim things that were not true and then quoting the NGOs about the safety of the data.
Right.
Hey everyone, Naomi Wolf here. How are you doing with your New Year's resolutions? January is here. My start was pretty easy. My resolution was to focus on my well-being, and we all know that the foundation of well-being is a good night's sleep. So if I could do just one thing to improve my sleep and overall well-being, it is taking the number one mineral for sleep, which also helps me personally on so many levels. Yes, I am talking about magnesium. Actually, I am talking about the Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. It's 7 different forms of magnesium in this supplement, which are involved in over 600 different biochemical reactions in the body. Pretty much every function in your body is upgraded when you do take magnesium, from the quality of your sleep for your brain function, metabolism, to your stress levels. And even if your 2025 resolution is not to focus on your health, as mine is, how are you really going to be able to achieve all your goals without quality sleep and stress management support? It's hard to do that. So please do yourself a favor and make Magnesium Breakthrough part of your daily routine this year so you can get the vitality that you need to conquer your dreams. Go to byoptimizers.com/Daily Clout now and enter promo code Daily Clout to get 10% off of any order. And if you subscribe, not only will you get amazing discounts and free gifts, you will make sure that your monthly supply is guaranteed. Again, that's byoptimizers.com/Daily Clout, promo code Daily Clout. Take care. Right? So there are games you can play all the time when you move the data out of the, boring and annoying, but quite clean compared to other countries, quite secure compared to other countries' housing of the government, and move it into private hands. So having said all of that, let's go back to you concluding you don't know if people who are not technologically sophisticated understand this. Do you think the president understands this? I mean, one reason I've been screaming, you've been screaming, I think, is to kind of educate the president and people around him.
So can I just talk money for a second?
Please.
Because I think what's happening in the money explains a lot. Now, you pointed out that the DOGE effort brought in a CEO of a cloud company, and you use a cloud because you want to share. Now, if you are going to troll massive amounts of data, that takes a lot of sophisticated software and capacity. One of the firms that's been created and received tremendous contracts from different agencies of government, so I assume most of those or some of those are standing, as well as many of the big companies and banks that do business with government, is Palantir. Mm-hmm. Their software is designed to troll through, lots and lots of personal data to see if, which laws you violated at the SEC or which laws you violated at this agency or that agency. So so what is one of the uses of that data? Well, it's trolling and looking for, IRS audits or, the medical data from Social Security disability is now all available for Palantir, in theory, if access is given, to troll and look for ways that you might be investigated or audited for, not doing something they say you're not doing anyway. So on January 27th, so the president's inaugurated on the 20th. On January 27th, XAI, which is a separate company from X, it's Grok, the Grok AI software of Elon Musk, did a further integration with Palantir's AI.
Oh, wow.
So they announced that their AIs are now somehow integrated, whatever that means. And Palantir stock, which is the best performing stock of 2024, then takes off like a rocket. And as of 4 days ago, had increased in market cap by $129 billion.
Oh, my goodness.
So something is happening that is causing investors to believe that Palantir. Now, if you look at Musk's companies, according to public reports, he is out in the private markets, not the public markets, raising more capital on SpaceX, XAI, and X. Okay. So while he's doing this and grabbing data that's causing Palantir's and presumably his market share valuations to rise, he's basically grabbing data that is causing all these companies' valuations to go up.
Oh, my God.
Right. Now, we're talking about massive violations of the conflict of interest laws, probably is what it looks like to me. But
wow.
If you look at what the market is saying about the value, to me, of possible access to DOGE data, it's extraordinary.
Wow.
And, we're talking about on all these different companies, and Visa has a partnership with X in that time period from January 27th to when I calculated Palantir, they were up over $40 billion. Right. So remember, because Musk has said he wants to turn X into an everything app, including financial. Okay. So I'm looking at $250 to $500 billion of market valuation added to a small group of companies during this period as part, I believe, of his planned sales. The CEO of Palantir sold some stock he sold over $1 billion of stock.
Oh, my God.
So you're talking about Rothschild and Rockefeller kind of fortunes being created here with this data. And that's why I think your video on the sack of Rome was so good, because you really gave people a sense of the value of the money. Now, let me just point out something really important to understand. Remember at the beginning of the last Trump administration when Chuck Schumer said, the president will learn he's got to do what the CIA wants. They have 52 ways from Sunday to get him, and there are two operations. So you have the CIA and the 17 intelligence agencies of the United States government, and you have the New York Fed. The New York Fed every day is borrowing money because we're running as a deficit. So they're selling treasuries to our pension funds and retirement funds, getting the money and putting in the bank account and transacting the bank account. Now, the reason that the president or Musk or any of these people can do things is because the New York Fed continues to finance it. The minute the New York Fed says, oh, no, you can't do that, they can't do that. I mean, Jay Powell has already made clear the president doesn't have the power to fire him, or ask him to resign. I mean, anyway, so the New York Fed and the CIA are not stopping this. And they could stop it like that. Or I shouldn't say the CIA, the 17 intelligence agencies. So whatever is happening, this has enormous establishment support.
Wow.
Okay. And it's important because if you look at what Musk is doing, and not just in the United States, we now have Putin announcing that he wants to work with Musk on advanced technology.
Oh my
Okay.
God.
Oh yeah, no. So we're definitely getting very new world order here. So you know, whatever Musk is doing, I did a count of how many Elon Musks exist.
Hmm.
So there's 6 companies that all require 6 full-time jobs.
Hmm.
We have 24/7 posting under Elon Musk's name on Twitter. That's got to be at least 3 to 5 people, right?
Right, right.
We have he's a champion gamer. That has to be 1 to 3 people. He's at all these different events that, how many events can you be at the same time? So what we're watching is not an entrepreneur, it's an operation, right?
Whoa.
And if you I did a complete detail of all the different investigations of SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink and X that are being done by government agencies. And systematically, if you look what the president and his executive orders or DOGE has been doing, they fired the White House conflicts of interest or ethics officer. They fired most of the inspector generals, including at all the agencies that are doing investigations of Musk's companies.
Oh my God.
And they really went after the SEC. We have a special executive order going after the Consumer Financial Protection Board and the SEC, just as Musk is violating, from what I can tell, the conflict of interest laws while he's and doing things that massively make the value of his and his allies' companies go up,
Mhm.
and they just happen to be, slamming the SEC. That can't be a coincidence.
Mm.
I mean, it could be a coincidence, but it's unlikely. So basically, if you look, so let me talk for a second about conflicts of interest. It is a criminal violation for a government special employee to intercede in matters that relate to their private profit.
Right.
That's a violation of federal law, and it's a crime. That's not a misdemeanor, it's a crime.
Mhm.
And yet we see Elon Musk sitting with Modi, lobbying him on behalf of SpaceX and Tesla, which is the support,
Mhm.
with the cameras taking pictures. Now,
Right.
if you look at, I dare say you and I, if we were breaking the law, we would not want to be filmed by all the major TV networks, right?
Right. Right.
Okay. So what this tells me is whatever we're watching, it has sufficient establishment support
Mm.
that it is a fundamental move. Now, let me tell you what that move is, the goal of that move.
Mhm.
One of the most important things to building a digital control grid is to give the bankers control of fiscal policy. To do that, you have to get rid of the civil service.
Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf. Have you seen the news from economists forecasting a depression, not a recession, a depression by the year 2030? We are in a perfect storm as Social Security and Medicare hit a breaking point with the largest generation reaching retirement. A smaller workforce means a smaller tax base, and pair that with our growing national debt and rising cost of living, we have a huge problem. So what are you doing now to protect your family for the future? Gold is a safe haven in hard economic times, and Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. So protect your future today. Text Daily Clout to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold and a copy of The Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, only information. Birch Gold has earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings. You can count on them too. Text Daily Clout to the number 989898 today.
Right.
So basically, if the civil service generally requires written instructions to do anything, and they check those written instructions to make sure they're authorized by Congress, both as a program, authorization of a program, and appropriation. And the civil service is very difficult because if they have written instructions, they require you to give them new written instructions. And they require those new written instructions to be authorized or funded by Congress.
Right.
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 And so if you and I went in and we wanted to change policy, we would just we would give the bureaucracy new written instructions.
Right.
Okay. When you don't want to take the time and you don't want to be on record as to what you really want, you simply fire and terrorize the bureaucracy and blow by them because you want to do things that Congress didn't authorize or haven't funded, and you want to do things that violate privacy laws, conflict of interest, all these different things. So and so it's very convenient if you want to castrate Congress in terms of authority and power to destroy the civil service. And that's what you're watching. The notion that the civil service is the deep state is like me saying Mr. Global is controlled by the people who do the night shift at Burger King.
Totally.
know?
Could you say more about that? Because when I try to say, some or many people in government really joined the government to serve their country. They really care about the rule of law. They're not the same as the deep state necessarily. I'm sure there's a Venn diagram where there's some intersection. Can you just say more about that? Because I like people do not want to hear that.
Well, there's been tremendous programming for 10 years. For 10 years, I've had various wars with people over who is the deep state and why the civil service is not the deep state. And I can't tell you the amount of time and money that's been put into trying to set them up as the fall guy. Whenever you do these kind of operations, you want to have a bad guy to blame who you can kill. And you always want to kill the guy who's standing in the way of getting done what you want to get done. So if you want to steal, if you want to take and plunder, the civil service is a problem. So, or if you want to go fast, the civil service is a problem because they require you to take the time to learn how to do neurosurgery with a scalpel instead of with a chainsaw. Right.
All right.
Right. Okay. So, but here's the thing. Let's go back to, because what we're watching is all part of building a new control model. Now, let's talk about Social Security. If
Catherine, can I jump in before you go on, please?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking when you said there's buy-in from the establishment, none of this would be possible without the tacit or overt support of the 17 intelligence agencies. What I'm thinking is moving all this data that's so protected out of privacy law and into the hands of private actors is a spy's dream, right? It's an intelligence community's dream because they could check. It's a turnkey blackmail operation. They can do a search of anyone's alcohol addiction, anyone's, drug addiction, anyone's venereal disease records, anyone's bad tax returns. Like they don't need a warrant. They don't need the Fourth Amendment. They don't need. Right?
Okay, what you're watching is the building of the social credit system. Okay. And so I'm going to use Social Security as an example. Howard Lutnick on Fox News this week said, we're canceling waste, fraud, and abuse. He said Social Security is wrong. Medicare and Medicaid are wrong.
Jesus.
Okay. Now, one calculation by Wall Street on Parade is Musk's companies receive $8 million a day from government contracts.
Wow.
And in fact, the Pentagon was investigating Musk because of his, whether he should have any kind of security clearance because of all of his talking to Putin and other leaders over the last couple of years. So anyway, but say a Social Security person receives $65 a day, right? So we saw all these headlines about corruption at Social Security, which I would say remind me whenever you get a new administration, they're out to prove the old guys were wrong and they're all right, and they run into a lot of things they don't understand. And so they say it's all corrupt, but they just don't. For example, in the Cobalt system, you have a way of using 150 years for a variety of purposes, and then they cook it up into something that's not. Okay, so part of this is just headlines. A part of it we'll get into, so that a corruption issue. If you want to start selectively canceling people's social security because they're not doing what you want, they're not playing ball,
Oh my God.
this is the operation you put into place, and you say that there's huge fraud on social security.
Right.
And then what you do is you take 20 political activists and you cancel their social security because corruption. And
Right.
then they spend 2 years in courts proving that it's not corrupt. And by the time they finish proving it, they spent more money than they'll ever get from Social Security.
Right.
Now, Howard Lutnick is not pointing out that Social Security is a trust fund. We all put the money in.
Mm-hmm.
And while 21 trillion was disappearing from the government he financed as a primary dealer, our government was using our savings in the Social Security Trust Fund to finance the government and finance the financial coup d'etat. And if you look at our investment performance, we're going down in value at the same time they and all their pals are skyrocketing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the evilness of how our savings account is being used, it's tremendous. If you look at the use of, mRNA technology to reduce our life expectancy and the great poisoning to reduce our, that's another evil story for Howard Lutnick, who's been financing the financial coup, to get on Fox News and start to build the case for cutting Social Security or cutting people selectively for corruption. Now, I say this, Naomi, as someone who spent 11 years and $6 million proving in court that, one, everything the government had said about me was a lie, and two, proving that they had no right of stealing my money. They owed me 2.1 million. I made them pay. And so I have lived through what it's like to prove that the government's accusations of corruption are false.
Right.
Now,
Right.
let's get into one other point.
Can I jump in there, Catherine, with a personal story? And even as we're having this conversation, I'm hoping that I can get through security and get home, after it airs. I just want to chime in. You've had that experience. It was searing. I've had the experience not only of being canceled by another administration unlawfully, my whole livelihood stripped, my whole reputation altered worldwide, but X, Twitter, right, colluding with that, not fighting it, going along with it, saying things about me that weren't true. You have to stay healthy and well at times like this. That I often have suffered from mobility issues, and now I don't. Part of my lifestyle is Native Path collagen. So Native Path's collagen formula is made with ingredients that are scientifically developed to increase bone mineral density, support tissue recovery, reduce wrinkles, enhance hair thickness, and strengthen nails. Who wouldn't want more collagen with all of these benefits? So right now, when you visit getnativepath.com/daily clout, you can stock up on Native Path collagen for up to an incredible 45% off today, plus free shipping. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You can try it risk-free today. It is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners, and it's third-party tested for heavy metals, which makes sure that it's pure and safe. It's flavorless. You can add it to anything. I add it to my oatmeal. You can add it to coffee or smoothies. Its formula makes it more bioavailable, meaning it's absorbed more easily and mixes without clumping. And the best part is Native Path is offering amazing bundle deals, 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee, Native Path is a trusted choice, and they offer an 800 number. You can ask any question. A real person is waiting to help. You can join a private Facebook community. I love these people. Share recipes, success stories. So that's getnativepath.com/daily clout and start your experience of transformation today. Resuscitating long deleted, immediately deleted tweets that didn't exist anywhere but in their own files. And then I just settled with X, right? But in the course of settling with X, I realized that Elon Musk could see all my tax returns So no negotiation I could possibly make was meaningful because he knew exactly how much, if he wanted to look, I earned. And then lastly, the Biden administration toward the end kept not counting tax payments I was sending in that were due, telling me I owed tax, and demanding to see an itemization of all of my financial assets, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is you and I have both been bullied financially, bullied through data, bullied through knowledge of what, of information about us that the government had, lies about us the government was telling, pressure the government was bringing to bear, and we were not criminals, And so these are just two examples, and not even the most serious ones, about how badly people right now who are cheering DOGE do not realize, need to think, how badly can you be hurt by a government that can hand over every detail about your personal life to bad actors or to its own kind of third parties to cut you off, switch you off, track you, ruin your business, make sure that your, fixed rate mortgage turns into a balloon mortgage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? I just want to say that, like, people really need to understand, because Catherine, one last thing I want to say, devil's advocate, a lot of people on X, of course, are saying, well, Naomi, or trolls or bots, they already have all our data. So devil's advocate, how is what we're trying to warn people about different than what already exists?
So what I call the government database does have most of your data, but most of your data is not in an AI. It is not accessible necessarily to foreign intelligence agencies.
Right.
And it is not available to gotcha kind of software by private corporations who want to use this to amass political investment or personal power.
Right.
And so, it's one thing for the NSA to have all your data and to be run by a civil service. It's another thing for your data to be in Unit 82 or in the Russian mafia. Because I hate to say this, the bigger issue here is I'm concerned from what I'm seeing around the world. AI is now completely out of control. And so where this goes, when you listen to people who really understand AI, and what they think is that this kind of out of control AI can lead to a human extinction event. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but we are now in a whole new world. And the danger is not that it's been just transferred to parties we can't trust and couldn't care less about us. They're looking to plunder us. It's being transferred to, out of control, and out of control that has absolutely no commitment to the human race or human intelligence or empathy.
Right. So jumping in there, people might say, well, if AI is coming and there's no way to stop it, it's pointless to protest if it's Musk's AI, but the government's AI would be constrained by some things that Musk's AI would not be constrained by, right?
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. But also, it's interesting. The one thing, if you look at AI that can grow to, to compete with the equivalent of a human intelligence of 6,000, instead of being 150, it's 6,000. You can teach that AI, you can parent that AI to be morally righteous. Right. And if the people building it and leading it are not and don't build that in, you're going to get a very different result.
Right. So yeah, well said. So going back to the foreign actors thing, this is something people really have to understand, because it's very annoying to me that, people keep saying, well, I've had, 16 notifications that there was a data breach, and, my social security number is already on the dark web. And I'm like, this is completely different from that. So one reason it's completely different is the hacker in, Lithuania, who may have your social security number from the dark web, doesn't also have your medical records, also have your student loans, also have your census information. They can't filter it all together. But the other thing, as you were talking about foreign actors, people really need to understand this. Elon Musk is, I guess, an American and a South African, but he also has business interests in China, in Russia,
Right.
all over the world, in tyrannies all over the world. So I'm thinking about my own household now, right? Like I'm a critic of the United States always, right? That's my focus. My husband has been very critical of the Chinese Communist Party, very, very, very impactfully critical. So now theoretically, depending on where our data went, as DOGE was siphoning it in the ways that we've established, China could have access to where we live, who's in our households, what our kids are applying for, what we're applying for, our loans, our medical records, and exert any kind of pressure on us that we can't even trace. Is that not correct?
Right. Correct. Absolutely correct. And Russia too. So we see Musk, Putin announcing he's now going to team up with Musk and God knows who what. So to me, given the establishment support here, this is a global operation.
Right.
Right.
Wow.
And
so paradoxical. Like we just escaped the global operation of lockdowns and mandates, and now the great liberator arrived, and it looks like an even more turnkey kind of control grid that's being clicked into place.
So let me talk about two things. The control grid coming in. I want to talk about the control grid coming into place, but I want to talk about the spin of the old tools versus the new tools.
Okay.
So one of the things that the Trump administration, I think, has done a very good job of is using historical government corruption to justify what they're doing. And you and I both know, if we look at, for example, a lot of the money that went out, if you look at the soft power tools in USAID, I find a lot of that expenditure offensive. Now, I know why they did it. You're trying to put everybody in that company on your payroll and have them run around to do things that don't interfere with you or do things that help your soft color revolution or whatever. But so you can get a lot of headlines by canceling some of the old corruption, right? That you don't need.
Right.
And part of this is not, it's not that you're canceling corruption. It's that you had a unipolar model that depended on soft power. You're not going to do that anymore. You're switching to a multipolar model and you have new tools, right?
Yeah.
So you've got Elon Musk, and so Lockheed has their big satellite system. Elon Musk has his Starlink, and and between Lockheed and SpaceX, you've got the whole Skynet into place, and you've got all sorts of new, more invasive tools. And so you don't need to spend all the money on the old tools, right? Right. So you cancel them and you say you're cleaning up corruption.
Right.
We're not cleaning up corruption. You're switching your corruption model.
Right.
Right. And so, we're canceling the old tools and we're building new tools, and the high tech guys want to do their high tech new tools, and they don't see a need for the soft power tools. Right. So, and so people really think, I've had a couple people say, "Oh, I'm so hopeful they're canceling corruption." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" You think that putting together a social credit system that can cancel the federal pension fund of anybody who gives them trouble, under guise of we're cleaning up corruption, you think that's cleaning up? You're not. You're switching from the old tools to the new tools.
Right.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, if you look at how the control grid is coming together, so for years we've been putting together different pieces of the control grid, and I've said the problem is once you put these final pieces into place, then we snap into the digital control grid. So let's look at the things that this team is doing to build that final leg of the control grid. The first is they absolutely need a very high quality digital ID system that's interoperable with all the ones around the world, right? And we're watching using immigration and election fraud as an excuse to push the digital ID. The states right now are pushing the real ID, and we want to do everything we can to stop that, because then we get a very high quality interoperable digital ID that can be hooked up with all your medical and other records these guys have. Okay, so we want to stop that. The second thing is you can't do the control grid if the civil service is in the way. So you got to get rid of the civil service. And what we're watching is literally the central bankers being given control of fiscal policy in a variety of ways, but part by destroying the civil service. And so we don't want that. We don't want the civil service being destroyed. We want Congress to continue to protect both the civil service and control of fiscal policy. We want Congress, we want our representatives to control fiscal policy. I've seen several reports of town hall meetings where congressmen are being, destroyed in anger over this. And you don't want to destroy your congressman. You want to help your congressman reassert control of fiscal policy.
Wow.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I
okay.
mean, not just the civil service that's being disempowered, as you rightly put it. This process castrates Congress too. Once it's all in AI, once spending is in AI, once legislation is in AI, Congress has no power.
Well, no, Congress does have power.
Okay.
Because Congress still has the power. Congress controls the New York Fed. Mm-hmm. Congress still has jurisdiction over the Federal Reserve. We're publishing a new series by John Titus called War for Bankocracy. Mm-hmm. And it shows you how much power Congress has in exercising transparency over what the Fed and the New York Fed, which is the bank account for the U.S. government, is doing.
Right.
And they still have that power. And they can still do something about all of this if enough of them will organize. But they need us to support those leaders in Congress who are supporting this, particularly where they team up with the state governors, the state AGs, the state treasurers who are fighting for liberty. Right. So you want to support your congressmen fighting for liberty, and there are many different ways to do it. We can talk about it. Let me mention two other things.
Sure.
What we don't want to do, the federal government, and you and I have been doing many things to document and bring transparency to the corruption at the federal level. Okay, so, we are not denying that, we don't like the corruption and we would like to see the corruption stop. Mm-hmm. If you and I were walking into the White House, one of the first things I would recommend, so you're the president, I'm the money guy, and I would say in 2018, we passed an administrative policy. We adopted an administrative policy that took the U.S. financial statements secret, called FASB 56. The first thing we would do is we would tear up that policy and stop secrecy with respect to the U.S. government finances. Okay. I would point out that the Trump administration and the DOGE initiative have been entirely silent. And the Secretary of Treasury and the Secretary of Commerce have all been silent. It was Trump who took the book secret, and they apparently want to keep them so. At the same time, they're turning the Treasury payment systems over to whatever they did when they got write-only access as well as read access. So something stinks. The second thing we would do is we would want to make sure that no financial transaction control system could come into place with a social credit system of the one it looks to me like they're building. Well, what have they done? Executive order says no CBDC. Now, a CBDC is a all digital monetary system coming into effect under the New York Fed and the Fed, which Congress still has jurisdiction over the Fed. The Fed hasn't wiggled out of that yet, although they've tried. Right. Okay, so they've said, we're going to do private crypto. Right. And what is that? Private crypto is a way of doing an all digital monetary system and control system over which you can operate completely out of Congress's jurisdiction. Right.
And you can fold all of our data into your private crypto.
Right. Now, let me keep going. So another part of the control grid is building the all digital monetary system. The last part, and a very significant part, Howard Lutnick made very clear that we had $500 trillion worth of land and mineral resources on the federal balance sheet. So the federal government, if we have 36 trillion of debt, we have far, far more in assets. Okay. Good. So and some of the states have huge portions of federal land. Idaho, Wyoming, Alaska, Utah. Utah's 63% of the land in Utah is federal land. Okay. So how are we going to plunder that? So they're talking about monetizing, privatizing the federal balance sheet. If you take that land and privatize it or privatize the management thereof, you dramatically change what the United States is and what's like, particularly in those states. Can you imagine all the private equity firms owning 63% of the land in Utah?
My God.
Right. Okay. So there is a plunder game going on, and the thing that concerns me the most about it is the danger that they could use crypto and Bitcoin to engineer it so that literally they get that land almost for free.
Right. Right.
And we have a piece up at the Solari Report called Bitcoin Bailout. We also have a great piece called What the States Can Do. Your website has a wealth of what states can do.
Thank you.
And you and I both know that the states can stand up here and assert jurisdiction that protect our sovereignty individually and collectively.
All right. Well, sadly, I could talk to you for hours about this. This is so valuable. Sadly, we've run out of time. So in our last few minutes, can you kind of be more specific about what people can do? Bearing in mind that when people have tried to exert state sovereignty, President Trump has been pretty aggressively hostile toward them, right?
So if you look at the current polls, the majority of the people in America do not support what the president is doing with DOGE. Now, and I think the more legitimate people who have their friends and family, or they lose their jobs and they realize, wait, we weren't doing anything corrupt. So I've had many stories come back to me of perfectly legitimate people losing their jobs or losing their grant or whatever. And the reality doesn't fit with the spin at all. So more and more people are realizing, and just bringing transparency to the facts. The thing I would focus everybody on, my quote for last year was, I'm going to give you my quotes for the year last year and this year. My quote for the year last year was, the currency of the future will be relationships of trust.
Wow.
We are moving into an out of control world where the lies are thick as thieves. And in this environment, you need to be teamed up with high integrity people who are willing to act, particularly at a family and community and local level, to maintain lawfulness. Okay.
Yeah.
And that relates to all the different banks and institutions you do business with. So we have to be networks of integrity. And you really want to focus in your world and your life. How can you be as careful as possible about making sure you and your assets are operating with people you can trust? So that's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, my watchword for this year is 2025 will be endowed by grace. And it's important to remember when things fall apart. I used to have an ally who'd say, the bigger the breakdown, the bigger the breakthrough.
Okay.
That's the time when grace can come in. And we are moving away from the old corruption. And a lot of that old corruption was terrible. We want to move towards a world which is lawful. And we have real enemies, including, the competition now between the US and China is very real. And the decoupling and the deglobalization is very real. But so everything is changing. It's changing in high speed. Don't get afraid. Don't panic. Let's bring that, invite the grace in. And that's why I keep saying, pray for everybody involved.
Right.
I mean, I can't tell you how glad I am to have my job. And I'm sure you're glad to would you want to be the president right now?
Well, on that note, Catherine, if I may, my last question, because I know a lot of people will watch this and because it's so powerful, they'll be very angry, especially if they're Trump supporters. Is there any possibility? I think of, and last question, I promise. I think of the fact that President Trump is in his 70s. Many of his advisors, were educated before the internet. Is it possible he doesn't understand the implications of the data plunder, or his advisors don't?
I think Trump is a very smart man. And you have to understand he's in a position where you have to, you can only choose from the options that you have available.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now we know he had, and the reason I would say, always pray for your leaders, always.
Mhm.
But if you look at his good instincts,
Mhm.
so one of the things he knows is the US can't perform.
Mhm.
You know, one of his things, I want to get back into performance mode. The
Mhm.
US can't perform if we're all chronically ill.
Right.
And if you see his bringing in Kennedy and what I think Kennedy can do, you know, he's kept his word, he's
Mhm.
brought Kennedy in, and
Mhm.
he wants to help get America healthy again. That's a great thing, and we want to support that. Okay,
Okay.
that's number one. Number two, he and Vance are both, you know, talking a lot about radical transparency.
Mhm.
And I do believe radical transparency can help.
Mhm.
And what you and I are doing, you and I are not saying, you know, we're opposed to the president. What
Right.
we're saying, we're for liberty, and we want to help every leader in there, particularly congressional leaders and particularly state leaders, do everything. One, see the lines clearly and support liberty.
Right. Well
And
said.
we need everybody here supporting liberty. This is not about personalities.
Mhm.
You know, this is about supporting liberty. So all the instincts we see in the president, you
Mhm.
know, one of the things I like about the president is he, as a businessman, he understands you perform or you fail.
Mm.
And he sees the failures that have happened on the global stage in
Mhm.
America,
Mhm.
and he wants to move to do something about it.
Mhm.
Now, I would say one of the worst things happening on the global stage is what's happening to our brand.
Mhm.
And that means, you know, if you get on social media and you look at the debate around all the confusion on these issues,
Mhm.
I'm seeing a level of debased and childish behavior which is
Mhm.
frightening.
Yeah.
And Americans need to take responsibility for the fact that we all got here together.
Mm.
This is our problem. We have to solve our
Right.
problem, and
Right.
we can't do that by acting like, you know, kindergarten.
Right. Well said. Well, so inspiring. I'm really glad you ended on that note, circling back to it's up to us. The campaign begins now, or the campaign is underway for liberty. It doesn't end just because a new sheriff is in town, even if
Right.
many people watching support that sheriff in theory and in practice. So, and others don't. So you've done so much to bring transparency and to identify what leaders at the state and federal level have to do to move ahead, rooting out corruption, still defend the Fourth Amendment, the First Amendment, you know,
Right.
our sacred rights, our sacred privacy. Where do people find you and how do they support you?
Solari.com, Solari.com. And of course, we're on all the social media, but I don't trust any. You know, I don't know how long that lasts, but we're at Solari.com. We'd love to have you as a reader. We have lots of free stuff. What the states can do is a great thing. Bitcoin bailout, they're both up there and they're free. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. And I can't thank you enough, Naomi, for all your work and what you're doing. So
Thank you so much. I'm hugely grateful. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.